The morning rush at Harrison's Market in downtown Oak Ridge, Illinois moved like clockwork. The automatic doors chimed, carts rattled over the tiles, and the receipt printer clicked with a steady confidence. Nobody looked up long enough to notice the tall white man who entered, shoulders relaxed, wearing a plain gray jacket and scuffed leather shoes. Before we continue, take a quick second to support the channel. If you enjoy powerful billionaire stories like this one, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join our community. It helps the channel grow, and lets us keep bringing you stories that matter. Thank you. Now, let's continue. His name was Daniel Whitmore. He didn't stride like someone important. He didn't carry himself like a man used to being served. If anything, he looked like the kind of person who would apologize for standing in your way. He picked up a basket, nodded once to the greeter, and drifted into the aisles as if he had all the time in the world. Daniel chose ordinary things: a loaf of wheat bread, a small jar of peanut butter, bananas with a few freckles, bottled water, and a carton of milk. He paused at the cereal, reading labels like a careful parent. He added oatmeal, then replaced the expensive brand with the store label without hesitation. Not one item in his basket suggested the reality that, on paper, he controlled an empire of subsidiaries, real estate, and technology contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. At the front register, Emily Carter scanned groceries with quick hands and a softer smile. She was 23, white, and always trying to look more rested than she felt. A strand of light brown hair kept escaping her ponytail, and she tucked it back with the same motion every few minutes. She had been standing since dawn, counting hours the way other people counted change. School tuition, rent, and her younger brother's inhaler made the numbers feel personal. When Daniel stepped into her lane, the line behind him was 3 customers deep. Emily greeted him like she greeted everyone. "Good morning, sir. Did you find everything okay?" "Yes," Daniel said, voice calm and quiet. "Thank you." She rang up the items. The total was small. Daniel reached into his jacket pocket, then paused. He checked the other pocket, then his pants. Then he patted the inside pocket again, slower this time, like he hoped his wallet might appear if he asked politely. Behind him, someone cleared their throat. A woman shifted her toddler from one hip to the other. The impatient silence that only a checkout line can create began to thicken. Daniel's face stayed composed, but his eyes narrowed in thought. He set his hands on the counter and exhaled. "I'm sorry," he said. "I seem to have left my wallet behind." Emily's training kicked in. Policy said she could suspend the transaction and call the next customer. She opened her mouth to say the practiced words, "Step aside, we'll help the next person, come back when you can pay." But Daniel didn't argue. He didn't demand special treatment. He simply began gathering the items to return them, as if the mistake was his alone to absorb. "That's my fault," he said, sliding the bread back toward the belt. "I won't hold anyone up." He turned to move away, and something about the restraint in that small moment caught Emily. Most people, when embarrassed, got loud. They blamed the system, their spouse, the bank, the universe. Daniel didn't. He accepted the inconvenience with a quiet dignity that didn't ask to be noticed. "Wait," Emily said. Daniel stopped and looked back. Emily reached into her apron pocket. Her fingers found the folded bills she'd set aside for lunch and bus fare. She hesitated, because she felt the weight of what she was about to do. Then she placed the money on the counter like it belonged there. "I've got it," she said. "You can take your groceries." For a second, the entire lane went still. Daniel stared at the bills, then at Emily. His expression didn't show shock so much as careful attention, like a judge listening for a hidden motive. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know," Emily replied. Her voice stayed steady. "But I want to. It happens. And you look like you could use one less problem today." Daniel's gaze flicked to the people behind him and back to Emily. He seemed to measure the moment, not for its drama, but for its truth. "Thank you," he said, softer than before. Emily nodded once. "Have a good day." Daniel accepted the bag, careful not to touch her hand as he took it. He didn't linger. He didn't explain. He walked out through the doors, and the bell chimed behind him like nothing important had happened. But Emily watched him cross the parking lot. Something about his quiet posture, the way he didn't hurry and didn't look back, stuck in her mind. She returned to scanning the next customer's items, yet her hands felt a little slower, as if her body knew she had made a decision that would echo. At noon, during her break, she checked her account on her phone and winced. She'd given away her lunch money. She told herself it was still worth it. People needed kindness, and she'd rather be short on snacks than short on character. Across town, Daniel Whitmore sat in the back seat of a black SUV that didn't match his jacket. The driver asked, "Home, sir?" Daniel looked out at the ordinary street, the ordinary market shrinking behind them. He didn't answer right away. "No," he said finally. "Take me to the office." The driver hesitated. "The board meeting starts in 90 minutes. Daniel's eyes stayed on the windshield, but his voice carried a new edge of purpose. "Good," he said. "I want to be early." He didn't smile, yet something inside him had shifted. In a world that tried to buy loyalty and rent compassion, a young cashier had offered help without asking for anything back. Daniel Whitmore had built his fortune by predicting human behavior. Emily Carter had just done something he hadn't predicted at all. Daniel Whitmore's real life began when most people's ended for the day. By the time the sun slid behind the brick buildings of Oak Ridge, his phone would usually be ringing with numbers that had too many zeros, and his emails would carry decisions that shaped other people's salaries, mortgages, and futures. He owned buildings he had never visited and companies whose logos appeared on products he didn't use. Yet he preferred a plain jacket and quiet errands, because the loudest wealth was also the easiest target. Whitmore Holdings had started as a small manufacturing firm founded by his grandfather. Daniel had grown it into a diversified machine spanning logistics, software, construction, and medical supplies. Newspapers called him the Invisible Billionaire because he avoided interviews and refused flashy philanthropy. The board meeting room on the 21st floor of the Whitmore Tower smelled like coffee and expensive carpet. Daniel arrived early, as promised, and stood at the window with the city spread out below him. When the directors filed in, they greeted him with rehearsed smiles and careful respect. "Daniel," said Charles Merrow, the chairman, "we didn't expect you in person today." Daniel turned. "I had a reason." He took his seat at the head of the table and listened as the CFO presented quarterly reports. Profits rose. Contracts expanded. Another acquisition waited on the horizon. Everyone spoke as if the company were a living thing that needed constant feeding. Daniel heard the numbers, but his mind replayed a checkout counter and a young cashier's steady voice. In his world, money was a lever. People pulled it to lift themselves, to crush rivals, to buy loyalty. Emily Carter had used money like a bridge. During a break, Daniel stepped into his private office and called his head of security, a former Marine named Grant Holloway. "Grant," Daniel said, "I need you to find someone for me." "Name." "Keep it discreet, please." "Emily Carter. Works at Harrison's Market in Oak Ridge." Grant paused. "You want a background check?" "I want the truth," Daniel replied. "Understood," Grant said. Daniel ended the call and stared at the city again. He told himself this wasn't sentiment. Sentiment got executives fired. This was analysis. If a person showed that kind of integrity when nobody was watching, it meant something. It meant the world still had a rare resource, and rare resources deserved attention. That night, Daniel returned to his penthouse but didn't turn on the lights. He sat at the kitchen island with a glass of water and thought about the last decade of his life. He had learned to spot manipulation the way a doctor spotted fever. He had met politicians who smiled while measuring your weakness. He had signed deals with men who shook hands like they were testing bone density. He had also seen kindness used as camouflage, a soft mask hiding sharp ambition. Emily's choice felt different, but Daniel didn't trust feelings. He trusted patterns. The next morning, Grant called. "I've got preliminary information," Grant said. "Emily Carter lives in a small apartment on the north side. No criminal record. Clean driving history. Works full-time. She's enrolled at Oak Ridge Community College, business courses." "Family?" Daniel asked. "Father died when she was 16. Mother left the state 2 years later. She's the guardian for her younger brother, Ben. Ben has asthma and a mild heart condition. Medical expenses are real." Daniel closed his eyes. So the money Emily had given away wasn't spare. It was sacrifice. Grant continued. "She also volunteers twice a month at St. Luke's food pantry. No social media posts about it. She signs in, works, signs out." "Anything else?" Daniel asked. Grant's voice lowered. "Her manager at the market cuts her hours sometimes. Emily covers shifts to make up the gap. She's behind on tuition by 1 payment." Daniel felt something tighten in his chest, not pain, but recognition. He remembered being 23, when his father died and the company nearly collapsed. He remembered the nights he slept in his office, terrified that one bad quarter would destroy the employees who depended on him. He had survived because one older accountant had stayed late, unpaid, to help him untangle the books. Daniel had never forgotten that debt. "Grant," Daniel said, "I want to meet her again." Grant hesitated. "As Daniel Whitmore?" Daniel looked at his plain jacket draped over a chair. "Not yet," he said. "I want to see who she is when she thinks I'm nobody." 2 days later, Daniel returned to Harrison's Market at the same hour. He chose the same items, almost as an experiment, and stepped into Emily's line. Emily looked up, and for a moment her eyes widened with recognition. Then she smiled politely, like she wasn't sure he'd remember. "Hi," she said. "You're the guy from the other day." "I am," Daniel replied. "And I brought my wallet this time." Emily laughed softly, the first real laugh Daniel had heard in weeks. "Good," she said. "Because my apron pocket is still recovering." Daniel placed a folded 20 on the counter before she could scan the last item. "For the other day," he said. Emily pushed it back. "I didn't do it for repayment." "I know," Daniel said. "But I'd like to, anyway." Her gaze held his. "Then donate it," she said. "Or tip someone who needs it." Daniel nodded, as if he had expected that answer. "All right," he said. "Tell me where." Emily's expression shifted. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "St. Luke's Pantry on Maple Street. They're always short." Daniel tucked the bill away. "Thank you," he said. As he left, Daniel didn't feel triumphant. He felt challenged. Emily Carter had just given him another task, another test, and she didn't even know she was doing it. Outside, he sat in his SUV and watched the market doors slide open and shut. The driver asked, "Back to the tower, sir?" Daniel smiled, just barely. "No," he said. "Take me to Maple Street." Maple Street was only 6 blocks from the market, but it felt older and harsher. Daniel Whitmore stepped out of the SUV with the same plain jacket and the same calm face, but his mind was busy. Emily's instruction, "Donate it," had not been a suggestion. It had been a boundary. She would not let her kindness become a transaction. St. Luke's food pantry sat beside a small brick church with faded white trim. A hand-painted sign read "Welcome," and a second sign, written in marker, read "Need volunteers." Daniel walked inside. Cardboard boxes lined the walls. 2 women sorted packages at a folding table, speaking quietly as if the space demanded humility. Daniel approached with the folded 20 in his hand. "Excuse me," he said. "I'd like to donate." One of the women looked up, surprised. "That's kind," she said. "You can put it in the envelope on the wall." Daniel did, then asked, "Do you see many people from Harrison's Market?" The woman smiled. "If you mean Emily Carter, yes. She's here when she can be." Daniel nodded. "She told me about you." The other woman, older, tilted her head. "Emily doesn't talk much about herself," she said. "But she works hard. Keeps her brother close." Doesn't complain. Daniel thanked them and left. In the car, he stared at his hands. The $20 felt small compared to his daily decisions, yet it carried more meaning than some million-dollar contracts. He had paid for impact before, with press releases and gala speeches. Emily's kind of impact was quieter and, somehow, heavier. That evening, Daniel asked Grant Holloway to dig deeper, not into scandals, but into needs. Grant returned with a list Daniel didn't like reading: overdue tuition, a medical bill that had been sent to collections, and a landlord notice warning that rent had to be caught up by the end of the month. "Is she in danger?" Daniel asked. "Not immediate," Grant replied. "But she's one bad week away. Like a lot of people." Daniel ended the call and sat still for a long time. If he wrote a check, it would solve everything, and it would also turn Emily's kindness into a story about his generosity. He didn't want that. He wanted her to keep her dignity, and he wanted her to keep choosing kindness because it was hers, not because it had been bought. On Thursday morning, Daniel called his assistant, Nora. "Clear my calendar," he said. Nora sounded cautious. "All of it." "All," Daniel replied. "And arrange a meeting with the CEO of Harrison's Market. Tell him I'm a potential investor." Nora paused. "You're buying a grocery chain now?" Daniel's voice stayed even. "Maybe. Set it up." By noon, Daniel sat in a glass conference room at Harrison's Market corporate office. The CEO, a polished white man named Trevor Sloan, shook his hand too firmly. "Mr. Whitmore," Trevor said, recognizing the name at once. "We're honored." Daniel sat without smiling. "I'm considering investments that strengthen local communities," he said. "Your company has reach. But I want to understand your frontline culture." Trevor launched into polished statements. Daniel listened, then asked, "How do you treat your hourly workers when times get tight?" Trevor replied, "We manage labor costs responsibly." Daniel leaned forward. "I was in one of your stores this week," he said. "An employee covered a customer's bill out of her own pocket." Trevor chuckled, relieved, as if this were a friendly anecdote. "Oh, that happens sometimes. Good for morale." Daniel's eyes did not soften. "It shouldn't have to happen," he said. "If your people are so stretched that kindness costs them lunch, you're running too close to the bone." Trevor's face reddened. "We can review scheduling." "Do," Daniel said. "Because I'm reviewing you." That afternoon, Daniel returned to Harrison's Market, not as a customer, but as himself. A black SUV pulled up, and the store manager rushed outside, sweating through his sweater. "Mr. Whitmore," the manager stammered. We didn't know you shopped here." Daniel walked in, and heads turned. Phones lifted. Whispers spread like sparks. Emily Carter stood at Register 3, scanning items. She looked up, and her hands froze. The color drained from her face as she recognized the same calm man in the plain jacket, now surrounded by security, now moving with the silent authority that money creates. Daniel stepped to her lane and set one item on the belt, a bottle of water. Emily swallowed. "Sir," she whispered, I didn't know." Daniel's voice was gentle. "You weren't supposed to." The manager hovered, ready to apologize for everything. Daniel ignored him. He looked at Emily and said, loud enough for the nearby customers to hear, "You paid for me when you thought I was nobody." Emily's eyes flashed with panic. "Please don't." Daniel lifted a hand, stopping her without shaming her. "You don't have to be embarrassed," he said. "You should be proud." Emily's throat worked as if she was trying to swallow a storm. "I didn't do it for attention." "I know," Daniel said. "That's why I'm here." He slid a card across the counter. It wasn't a check. It was an invitation, printed simply, "Whitmore Foundation, interview request." Emily stared at it. "What is this?" Daniel answered, "A job opportunity. Paid training. Full benefits. Tuition covered. And a role that lets you help people without sacrificing yourself." The manager's jaw dropped. The line behind Daniel went silent again, but this time it wasn't impatience. It was awe. Emily's eyes filled. "Why me?" Daniel's gaze held steady. "Because character is rarer than money," he said. "And you proved you have it." Emily's hands trembled as she picked up the card. She nodded once, unable to speak. Daniel paid for the water with cash, as if to keep one small thing ordinary, and walked away. The store remained quiet, not because a rich man had entered, but because everyone had just watched power bow, slightly, to kindness today. Emily Carter didn't sleep much that night. The invitation card lay on her kitchen table beside a stack of overdue notices and a half-finished homework worksheet. Her brother Ben sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, watching cartoons with the volume low, sensing that something important had happened even if he didn't know what it was. Emily kept replaying the moment the quiet stranger became Daniel Whitmore, the name people said like it carried gravity. She didn't tell Ben that she was afraid. Not afraid of Daniel himself, but of hope. Hope was dangerous when you'd lived with bills that never stopped arriving. Hope made you imagine a future, and imagining made disappointment sharper. The next morning, Emily took the bus to Whitmore Tower. Nora Delaney met her in the lobby and led her upstairs. On the 21st floor, Daniel waited in a conference room with glass walls and a view of the river. He stood when Emily entered, not like a king receiving a subject, but like a man meeting an equal. "Thank you for coming," he said. Emily kept her chin up. "I didn't come for charity," she said quickly. Daniel's eyes softened. "Good," he replied. "Neither did I." He gestured to a chair. "Sit. Tell me about you." Emily hesitated, then spoke. She explained her classes, her work schedule, Ben's appointments, the way rent climbed while wages stayed still. She didn't perform suffering. She stated facts. Daniel listened without interrupting, hands folded, like he was taking testimony. When she finished, Daniel slid a folder across the table. "This is the Whitmore Foundation Apprenticeship," he said. 6 months of paid training. You'll learn community finance, grant operations, and small business support. After that, if you want, you'll have a permanent role. Emily opened the folder. The numbers made her dizzy. The salary alone was more than she had ever earned. Benefits covered Ben. Tuition assistance erased the payment that kept her awake at night. Emily looked up sharply. "This is too much." Daniel shook his head. "It's appropriate," he said. "And it's not a gift. It's work. Hard work." Emily's voice cracked. "Why would you offer me this because I paid for groceries?" Daniel leaned back. "Because I didn't forget my wallet by accident," he said. Silence dropped between them. Emily's eyes narrowed. "So it was a test." Daniel didn't flinch. "It was," he admitted. "Not the kind you think. I'm tired of building systems that reward performance and ignore character. I wanted to see what the world looked like when I removed my name." Emily's hands tightened on the folder. "That's not fair." "You're right," Daniel said. "It wasn't fair. To you. To anyone who's been asked to carry someone else's mistake." Emily breathed in, steadying herself. "Then why do it?" Daniel looked out at the river for a moment. "Because my money insulates me," he said. "It protects me from real consequences. I wanted to feel, for once, what happens when a man has no leverage." Emily stared. "And you chose a grocery store." "I chose a place where people can be cruel," Daniel said, "and also a place where they can be quietly good." Emily's anger softened into something else, understanding, maybe, or exhaustion. "I didn't do it to impress you," she said. "I know," Daniel replied. "That's why you're here." He tapped the folder. "There's a second part," he said. "If you accept, I want you to help me change Harrison's market policy. They cut hours, squeeze workers, and then celebrate morale when an employee rescues a customer. That's backward." Emily blinked. "You want me to fight them?" Daniel nodded. "With me," he said. "Your voice carries truth in places my money only makes noise." Emily thought of her manager's casual hour cuts. She thought of co-workers skipping meals. She thought of Ben's inhaler and the way she'd rationed groceries at the end of each month. "What would it look like?" she asked. Daniel opened another page in the folder. "A worker support fund," he said. "Emergency grants for employees. A guaranteed minimum schedule. And a policy that forbids managers from pressuring staff to cover customers." Emily frowned. That last one sounds obvious. Daniel's mouth tightened. It isn't, he said. Emily sat back, heart pounding. This wasn't just a job. It was a chance to move a lever that usually moved her. Emily looked at the papers again, then at Daniel. If I take this, she said, I need one promise. Name it, Daniel said. I don't want to be someone's inspirational story, Emily said. No interviews. No videos. No, look what the billionaire did. Daniel's expression turned serious. Agreed, he said. Your privacy is part of the offer. Emily nodded slowly. Then I'll do it, she said. On her first day, Emily learned how the foundation evaluated requests, not by pity, but by impact. She sat with analysts, reviewed grant files, and practiced saying no without cruelty. Daniel insisted she ask hard questions and listen harder, because dignity mattered more than dramatic rescues always. Daniel exhaled, as if he had been holding his breath since the market. Welcome, he said. Change started quickly. Daniel tied any investment to worker protections, stable schedules, emergency help, and a rule that no employee would be pressured to cover customers. Within weeks, Emily's life shifted from survival to stability, and she kept volunteering at St. Luke's. One evening, months later, Daniel visited the pantry again. He didn't wear a suit. He stacked boxes with the rest of the volunteers, sleeves rolled up, hands dusty with cardboard. Emily noticed him and walked over. You're back, she said. Daniel smiled. You told me to donate, he said. I'm following instructions. Emily laughed, this time without fear. Good, she said. Outside, the wind was cold and the streetlights painted the sidewalk gold. They closed the van doors and went back inside. It wasn't a headline. It was work, and it was dignity. Daniel felt rich in a way money couldn't measure.